kind of background music. I was going to say background music, intro music. That is my kind of intro music. No fuss, no muss, just music. I like that. I think I'm actually going to keep that. Hello and welcome to the Long for Truth Show. This is the podcast that exposes the crazy, the wacky, the ridiculous, the downright blasphemous things that are being said and done in the name of Christ by the Gnostic Evangelical Industrial Complex. I'm your co-host, Dan Long, and we have a little wacky for you today. Got a little crazy for you today. Got some ridiculous, and we got some blasphemous. You're going to be shaking your head at the end of this one. We're going to start out by going over to Facebook and looking at a video, ironically enough, from Jen LeClaire. And I say ironic because the video is entitled Christian Witches. Christian Witches. And that's why I say it's ironic, because you have what I would consider a quote unquote, and I'm putting Christian in air quotes here, Christian witch talking about Christian witches and trying to warn you about Christian witches. So we're going to head over to Facebook and look at that. And then when we head over to the crazy part of the show, as if wacky wasn't enough, we're going to look at something from Georgian Bonov, his time over in Glasgow, Scotland. We're going to be listening to a street interview that he does with a fellow from Scotland. Yeah, you'll see that. Anyway, once we finish with that, I'm going to take you over to a website here. Let me see. I've got it up here. Yes. By Doug Addison. And that guy's wacky, crazy. He's insane, in my opinion. But he's got a blog post up that is called Why You Don't Need to Be Afraid of Seeing Angels. Why you don't need to be afraid of seeing angels. But before we do that, we're going to look at, we're going to go back to Georgian Bonov, and we're going to just tell you, I think there's a 15-second clip video or something like that of him doing a fire tunnel there in Glasgow. So we'll do a lot of that stuff. Everything, just about everything is on Facebook. I think I've got one blog post up that I want to look at. Anyway, before we head over to Facebook and look at Jen LeClaire, let me take a sip of my coffee here. It is early, by the way. It is, well, I've been up since 3, but it is 4:57. I'm looking at my clock right now. It is 4:57 a.m. here in upstate New York on a Lord's Day, Sunday morning. Give me just a second here. So I've got my coffee here. I've got my stuff all set up, and we're going to be good to go here in a second. Couple of things. If you have not listened to last week's podcast episode, I want to encourage you to do so. I want to encourage you to head over to our Spreaker page, Long for Truth, and I will link that page, of course, in the blog. They're actually, you know what? I'll put it in the blog. But when I put this Spreaker player, when I embed this thing into the blog post, I'll make it so that you can just see the whole playlist there. And on the playlist, you'll see last week's episode. And last week's episode, Steve and I got to have a really good conversation with Eric Pedersen. Eric Pedersen is the Outback Berean. And he is also on Spreaker, and he also has a blog called The Outback Berean. And I've linked that on last week's blog post. You can check that out for yourself. But we had a good conversation. We talked about Eric's time in the charismatic movement, how he got involved in the charismatic movement, how he came out of the charismatic movement, and we talked a lot about the gospel, and we also talked about how he came to embrace the biblical gospel. We just had a great conversation. Eric's a great guy, and so I hope you go back and you listen to that episode, I really do think you're going to enjoy that. Also, I know a few weeks ago, I did a podcast episode called "The Dangers of Mike Bickle," and I am planning on still doing part 2, but this time with part 2, I'm going to have, hopefully, as far as I know, I'm going to have a special guest. I got in contact with Tony Allen. Tony Allen is the host of the Design of Providence podcast, and he will be joining me. Tony knows his stuff. To me, he's the go-to guy when it comes to IHOP, because he's been to the One Thing conferences. He has done a lot of research on IHOP and Mike Bickle, and he knows far more than I know about this stuff. And he's done far more research than I have about this stuff. So we're gonna talk about Mike Bickle. We're gonna probably talk mostly about the theology of Bickle, but we may go on some rabbit trails, which is always fun, and talk, about other things that IHOP is involved with. But I think it's going to be a good episode. That is in a few weeks. It's not going to happen for a few weeks. Be looking forward to that. That's coming up in the future. That will be, oh my goodness, part 2. That's what we will do. That will be the part 2 episode of The Dangers of Mike Bickle. So those are the 2 quick announcements that I wanted to talk about. Now let's go over to Facebook. Let me click over here. Saved videos. Okay. Nope, I don't want that. Sorry about that. Boom and boom. Okay, so I have a Facebook video here that I put under my saved categories here in Facebook. And it is by Jennifer LeClaire, and it's called Christian Witches. Let me tell you what's next. So let's take a listen to Jen LeClaire. She talks about Christian witches.
Hello, everyone. Jennifer LeClaire here, senior leader at the Awakening House of Prayer in South Florida, founder of the Ignite Network. I am here today to remind you of something I said a year ago. Why? Because it's happening now, and it's going to keep on happening. We are in the era of the rise of darkness. We are in a new time, a new season. We are seeing the rise of darkness.
We are seeing the rise of darkness, she says. Yeah, we're seeing the rise of darkness more and more in the church. We're seeing the rise of darkness from wacko charismatic leaders like Jen LeClaire. That's where we're seeing the rise of darkness. The world itself has always been dark. It really boggles my mind how much craziness and darkness is rising up in the church today. That's where I would say the darkness comes from.
At epic rates. Now, I actually prophesied about this in a book that I wrote last year. I believe it was last year, called Angels on Assignment Again. I wrote about it. I expressed it. I've actually been pounding this drum for a few years. And every year it seems like there's some kind of new fascination, some kind of new work of darkness, some kind of course, we know that there's nothing new under the sun, right? We know that there's a time for everything and a season for everything, and nothing new under the sun. That's according to Ecclesiastes chapter 3. So we know there's nothing really new, but the enemy likes to rear his ugly head in different ways, at different times, in different seasons. For example, last year, Christmas, there were more Ouija boards sold than years and years and years and years and years before. There was a resurgence of Ouija boards. That was on Google's list of top 10 Christmas gifts. Ouija boards were the far and away bestseller. What does that tell you? It tells you that there's a generation of young people who are fascinated with the spiritual world, but they're not getting, now this is not my message today, we're going to talk about Christian witches in a moment, but the Lord wants me to say, you know what? We're not giving them, we're not feeding them, we're not demonstrating to them.
Yeah. Yeah, no, the Lord isn't speaking to her at all. This is all coming from her own mind. And okay, there is a resurgence in Ouija boards, but there is also this incredible fascination with visions and revelations and dreams and all this stuff. And basically what we have here is nothing more or nothing less than Gnosticism.
Enough of the power of the Holy Spirit. We are not getting the gospel message out far enough to reach those who are on the fringes of Christianity, who are the nuns, which is a class of people who don't describe themselves as anything.
Here's something else, too, to think about. Have you ever really heard these guys? She just said, we're not getting the gospel out enough. Have you ever really heard these guys preach the gospel at all? We're going to be talking about the gospel because at the end of all of this garbage that we're going to listen to from her and George and Bonov and Doug Addison, all that garbage, we're going to need to cleanse our minds with the gospel. So we're going to end on a positive note. That's something that I want to try to do on every episode, is end in a positive note, to talk about the goodness and the grace and the mercy of Jesus Christ and what he has done for you. Because this is what is needed. I mean, this is the cleansing agent for heresy. It's just ridiculous. But these guys don't preach the cross of Christ. And if they do, it so watered down that you just miss it, almost miss it completely. So you don't hear these guys talk about the gospel. Their gospel is a gospel of signs and wonders. That's their gospel.
We are not able, it seems, to penetrate the next generation with the truth of the gospel as effectively as we need to. So they have navigated or been attracted to the darkness. So this is, again, nothing new. When my daughter was growing up, vampires were all the rage. I remember Harry Potter was all the rage. Very violent video games were all the rage. I thank God that she had no interest in any of these things. Her friends, they did. Her very best friend was just consumed and fascinated with the vampire series. You remember those things. And many of her friends, Harry Potter, she never saw any of those movies, never wanted to. And I'm grateful for that. But we have a generation now that is seeing darkness everywhere. And we need to shine our light even brighter. So today we're exposing.
No, please. Please don't shine your light. No. Do not do any shining, but you're not going to be able to stop her. She's on Facebook. She's the charisma media lady. She's going to be, just putting this stuff out there every single day.
Is a better word. It's not fabricated, but it's an exaggerated response from the media. The media is celebrating darkness. Christian witches have been around. Christian witches is an oxymoron. There is no such thing. But there are Christians who practice witchcraft. Now, we're going to talk about both sides of this issue. But there have been these who call themselves Christians, who practice witchcraft, who are not part of the Wicca religion, but actually claim to be Christians. There are those who are very outward and expressive with their practice of witchcraft and dare you to defy them. We've seen this all over the news. This has been going on, though, forever.
Yeah, and it would be Jen LeClaire Jen LeClaire would be one of those Christian witches. And in my opinion, she uses impartations and all this other kind of garbage that's out there that you would find in something like Wicca.
Now is the media is exploiting this for ratings. Understand this. This is not new. Yes, it is escalating. It is rising. And part of the reason it's rising is not because Christians are commenting on it. Some people say, well, sister, you shouldn't comment on that. You're just bringing more attention. You know what? No, I'm not bringing more attention to the devil. I'm exposing it with the light of the gospel so that our children hear the side of truth rather than just hearing the Christians defending themselves. Amen. The Bible has plenty to say about all these things. Now, we see very clearly that this